better example, of course, right, than it's not even the Gothic period, it's pre-Gothic. It's the most beautiful, one of the most beautiful books in the world, okay? It's the Book of Kells, right? Written by Irish monks in the 9th century, okay? Who decorated their text. You know all this anyway, you've seen examples of this before, okay? Gothic, or text is Gothic, but the language is Latin, of course, right? And then highly decorated images all around it. In their case, they thought to make it more beautiful and more significant, right? Which is lovely, of course, right? But in this case, the text and the image, they can't tell them apart in terms of the overall impact. Okay? This book is in Ireland. Right, here we go. Same thing. A Gothic text, right? Look at the colours. Look at the imagery. This is breaking down that clear-cut distinction between information in that data-driven digital sense of the modern, okay, and imagery, okay. They are being fused together in order to punch a meta-message right across, okay. And here we have it. A classic example, of course, right, is Chinese calligraphy. Right? Chinese calligraphy, they are pictograms. Now, originally, they were pictograms, which meant each little image, was a picture of something that referenced that something. This is an image of Chinese characters. The little bits in here, as you can see, are a Japanese commentary on the Chinese text, right? Because the Japanese learned a lot from the Chinese. Now, here, bear this in mind, I'm giving you a list. Quickly, scribble it down. Right? You got your pen? Bit paper? Okay, take this down. Okay, right. So in terms of deconstructivism, as it's applied to graphic design, okay, they use certain techniques. You know the way that Eisenman's apartment block in Berlin, the whole thing was shunted on the outside and angled and whatever. Okay, same thing. These are the games that the deconstructivists play in order to get an exploded, deconstructed image at the end of the day. In graphic design terms, change the size of the font and type. It's not all going to be neat, 12 font, Times Roman. Okay? It can vary. Okay? Unusual custom fonts to design them yourself. Clutter pages. Right? Randomized organization to get complexity. No overall order, apparent order, and the mistakes are revealed. Do you remember that text I showed you that I had? When you show the, scribbling and editing and, all of that kind of thing? That kind of thing, and it gives a richness to the page. Now, a lot of this, very important, a lot of this was driven by the advertising industry. We're not talking about the publishing industry, the book industry, which stays the same. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to read it. Okay? But the advertising industry, which wanted powerful images, to sell things, to sell useless things to the vast majority of people, right? They used these techniques. This is where these techniques were really used in that deconstructivist sense. Okay? Now, more. No grid. It's like modern architecture, for heaven's sake. There is no grid. Of course, there's a grid. There's a conceptual grid. But there's no right-angled grid that holds everything together like a very tight and boring corset. Okay? There's no grid used on the page to organize the page. Big ideas beyond functionalism. Aesthetics, impact, emotion, whatever you want to call it. The ambiguous. Modernism hated ambiguity. It couldn't allow each thing had to be specifically designed for a specific purpose. Okay? No ambiguity about its function. When you read it, you could tell what it did on the tin. Okay? Other meanings, which of course is an extension of ambiguity. Other meanings, there were possibilities you could read it slightly differently if you wanted to. And of course, multiple messages inside the same frame. Did I say frame? I'm inside the same space. Okay. Here you go. Run through. This is a designer called Neville Brody. Okay. And you probably recognize all this stuff from advertising and magazines and hoardings and whatever that clutter up our lives. Okay. But this is a new introduction when you compare it to what went on in the 50s. Okay. This is radical stuff. Okay. And it's namely the breakdown of the picture space. It just occurred to me. It's a bit like the beginnings of modern art. The breakdown of the picture space and the dissolution of forms. Okay? Shifting towards abstract art. Here, you get it all. Different kinds of text, colours, images, whatever you like. Okay? Again, get your wee pencils out. Okay? This is the list again of the things that Decon did inside graphic design, but you could very easily, by association, apply them to modern architecture or modern deconstructivist architecture. That's the case. Okay? Have a look. They don't mind a collision of images, a clashing collision of images. They don't mind a disruption of your assumptions about what's being said or how it's being said. Okay? Disintegration of the overall viewpoint. There is no classical framework with a perspective, point or focus point or anything else like that. Fracturing, splitting up the image. Each element is an independent reality simply floating around in this space. Right? Each element reveals what it really is. But who cares what it really is? Because when it's in that matrix of other elements, it tends to be slightly ambiguous. Free-floating elements within the frame of things. Hey, palimpsest. I want you to remember this word, palimpsest. Palimpsest is a very beautiful concept, right? Give you an example. In the Gothic period in Europe, paper was very hard to come by. Okay? So once, when somebody wrote, usually the monks, okay, wrote lines of text, there was a space between the lines. Okay? Guess what they did when they ran short of paper? They wrote between the lines, okay, of the text. So one text was laid in another. You maybe have heard the phrase to read between the lines. Well, that's what it means. In other words, there is a dominant text there, but when you read between the lines, there's another message going on entirely. It's a bit like the small print on legal forms, you know. It's there to bamboozle you, right? So basically, this is a palimpsest where you get text upon text, meaning upon meaning, layered, sometimes by accident. In this case, it's by accident. It's a poster on a wall that's been ripped and torn, other things, stacked on top and torn. Okay? And age itself has withered these things. I will show you, if the camera moves slightly, I will show you another palimpsest. Right here. Here, it is literally text on text. Text on text on text. Between the lines of the original text, there's handwritten text. There's changes of colour. There's a supertext placed on top of that. In other words, I happen to know there are 4 different text units inside this one painting, this one digital print, in fact. That is palimpsest, one and the other. But of course, that's the visual aspect. The other aspect, of course, is the meaning. Just to go back to the original idea of deconstructivism. Each one of these little texts on its own is telling a different story. Right? In other words, if I stripped out all the text and only left one, I could read that and it's quite coherent. Right? I stick the other one in, that's also quite coherent. But when it's mixed, when all these texts are mixed, then you get ambiguity. Right? Which is a powerful emotive impulse. Okay? And this, again, same thing. Failed elements, broken elements, ambiguous elements. Now, pencils out. Okay? Here we have it again. Here we have another list of Decon approaches. things that would be inserted into any product that you like, any graphic design. Now remember, if I'm talking about graphic design, I'm also talking about architecture. Okay? And I'm also talking about product design. It's decon applied to each of these. So there are going to be analogies, functional similarities, between each of these fields. Here is a list that may apply to both. Play, humour, irony, parody, all of that. All of the kinds of stuff that you get in human, natural conversation. Irony. Not too much, unfortunately, but yes, it's there sometimes, okay? And you can laugh, right, about this. Okay? Decentering, contention. All of these things are applied to the product, or to the formation of the product, in order to make it richer in its representation, more complex, and in a sense, more authentic about human experience and human lives. Okay? David Carson again, same issues, decentering, ambiguities. This is what I was saying. The whole image delivers the message. There's no clean cut. This is the information, and this is the pretty picture that goes with the information. No, 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 no. Bang! There is a collision. Right? Okay? And this is, I'm not sure, I think it's Carson talking about how to organize the graphics page. Alright? Against the columns of text, neatly boxed, okay? Pictures, steady relationships of headline, sub-headline, and text. Alright? All of that. What you get is free form, space, right? Like when you look at the sky, you see the sky, a billion stars, okay? They're all in a random order, alright? And they're therefore powerful. Powerful. Imagination and shock. Let's be clear. When Eisenman produces his building in Berlin, or Giri in Bilbao and Los Angeles, later one in Los Angeles, okay? They're injecting an element of shock into these images. Shock. You pay attention, okay? Whether that's a good thing or not, I'm not sure. I like walking through Victorian cities, okay? 19th century cities, and this kind of gentle, vibrating unity and harmony, right? A play on variations as you walk along the street. But, okay, move on. Decon, Bilbao, Gehry, Eisenman, okay? Shock. In this case, as I say, you can't take this picture and give it to your mother for Christmas. Okay? Oh, I like this. This is very nice. Explains exactly what. What you've got, of course, is the Bull Durham advert, okay, which has been overlaid to some extent by another advert on this wall in the States. Okay? You're getting this ambiguity, but you're also getting a sense of time passing, fading, if you like. Okay? Text explosion. All of these are decon games being played out. There is no grid, there is no clarity, there is no single image, there is no meta-narrative anymore. There's simply universal space, right? You can play around with things. Have a nice day. See you again.